Good evening, everyone. I want to thank you all for coming here. My name's Irvin Mintz. I'm the president, of the Winston-Salem Forsyth County Council of PTAs. This is an informative session, questions and stuff. As the PTA, we do not promote or endorse. This is all for everyone to learn what their candidates are. We want to thank our host, Reverend Alan Carlisle, and the Exodus United Baptist Church, Amy Schumann and Donald Dunn for coordinating everything, and our moderator, Justin Green, who I'll turn things over to now. Thank you.
All right, hello everyone, how are y'all doing? Great. All right, good, I like that response. I don't always get that from my students. I'm the head coach of the Wake Forest debate team, and I also teach over at Wake Forest. But as someone who's passionate about education, got two kids going through the system, we like to make sure that we're out and about and trying to moderate some activities. The main goal of tonight is informational, so if you'll notice on one part of the program, we've got a few quick tips or suggestions. After each one of our speakers, unless they say something you absolutely cannot stand, we ask that you clap for them. If you really liked it, clap or get it a little bit louder. But just the fact that they're up here speaking, spending their time with us, is worthy of appreciation in our viewpoint. We'll try to refrain from profanity if it happens. We'll try to avoid it, but we understand. Even better. We'll try to call on you, and then we've also got timers for the speakers that are fairly loud that hopefully they can see. If they get up to time, we'll let them finish their sentence, their thought. If it starts to get a little bit long, then we'll just start to clap for them and say what a great job they've done. But our goal is to try to stay on time so we can have as much audience questions as possible. Khalil is walking around with extra cards, and we'll be collecting any questions that you have. And so what we'll try to do is work across our way on the stage, and we'll start here with Alex and move across with each of our opening speakers for 2 minutes. Any questions from you all before we get started? All right, my job is to get out of the way and let these brilliant folks talk. So without further ado, Alex, if you'll start us off.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Alex Bohannon. I am a proud product of the Winston-Salem Forsyth County School System. I am a 2012 graduate of Parkland High School, and I've been involved with children for about 5 to 7 years, working with them in extracurricular capacities. I currently serve as a program assistant at the Ken Carlson Boys and Girls Club just down the street, and I work with 7th grade and up boys. Our students, particularly in District 1, within this system, are languishing in a system that is not meeting their needs. And so it's time for a new face and a fresh perspective on our school board. Every single student in this system should be able to imagine their place in the world, innovate wherever they go when they graduate, and inspire others to do the same. We can accomplish this by thinking big. B for be supportive. We have to bolster all systems of support for students, because the research tells us that those high impact practices are going to be the common denominator in improving proficiency. The second piece is I, for include everyone. You have to have a seat at the table. Everyone does. Because more often than not, if you're not at the table, it's because you're on somebody's menu. The third piece is G, for give context. In this day and age, in a contemporary America, we have to understand the importance of novel learning experiences and go beyond the traditional classroom approach. With the advent of technology, we should be able to incorporate new technology, new facets, new different ways to understand and to meet students where they're at so that they can learn the best that they can. Thank you all so much.
Good evening. My name is Barbara Haynes-Burke, and I'm a candidate for school board for District 1. I've been employed in this school system for almost 30 years. During my almost 30-year tenure, I have taught on every level. I have taught elementary, I have taught middle, and I have taught high school. I'm currently an administrator at Carver High School, where I have been for the last 6 years. During my almost 30-year tenure, I have been able to experience and witness firsthand the day-to-day realities of what really occurs in our schools. I have worked boots on the ground for almost 30 years as a teacher and an educator. I know what we need in our schools. I am running for school board because I'm concerned about the data, the recent test scores, and the failing schools that we have, most of them in District 1. And I would like to use my knowledge, I would like to use my experience, I would like to use my strategies for improving growth and helping students to be successful, and the experience that I have had with supporting teachers and helping them to be successful, and working with parents and other educators to improve our schools, to improve our school system. So I'm asking you to think about voting for a candidate who understands curriculum, who understands Common Core and alignment, who understands reading and analyzing and disaggregating data, and who has already had the experience working with other educators. I think it's time to put someone on the school board who will be in a position to make policies, who will possess the same degrees, certification, and qualifications as the teachers that we expect to implement these policies possess. So again, Barbara Hainsberg, thank you.
Hello, my name is Eunice Campbell, and I am running for school board for District 1. I am a person who wears many hats. I am a PTA president for Gibson Elementary School, proud PTA president. I've been the president for that school for 5 years now. I also am on the board for the Title I Parent Advocacy Council for the school district. I am a precinct chair for the Democratic Party. I also have been married for 21 years to my husband, who graduated from R.J. Reynolds. I myself have been living in Winston-Salem for almost 30 years. I have an 11-year-old son that goes to Gibson Elementary, so you see, I have skin in the game. Now, I'm a graduate of Winston-Salem State University with a degree in business administration, and I have my MBA from Colorado State. The reason I'm running for school board is that during the years of my advocacy, there were things that I noticed that was missing from a lot of my meetings in our community, and that was members of the school board. And I thought to myself, how am I at all these community organizations that I'm involved in, and I'm not seeing the faces of our school board? So that drove me to start looking at the possibilities. My background is data analytics, so I feel that this is the type of person, I'm the type of person that would be a benefit to the school board by using my skills in data analytics and business administration, because school or education is big business. It's a multi-billion-dollar business. And I have the experience over the years of dealing with major corporations and being able to create win-win situations, which is what we need in our school district. I'm Eunice Campbell. Thank you.
Excuse me. Good evening. My name is Chinita Barbara Johnson, and I am a candidate also for Winston-Salem Forsyth County School Board in District 1. And I'm running because I believe that all education must be equal and quality driven for all students to achieve their full academic potential. That's not just words. Those words have been in our education system for over 100 years. We've been striving for it and have not fully achieved it. We came close until 1995 when we were down to 5 single predominantly race schools in Forsyth County. And then in 1995, we entered school choice, which ballooned our schools to more than 20 before the 21st century came up. So we are not giving our children even the mandate that the state says, which is a good public school education. No child, I believe, is expendable. Every child must be prepared and equipped fully for the demands of the 21st century concerning college and the workforce. And right now, we have not done that. I'm running because we also have a problem concerning accountability, transparency, and communication with our school board. We have a problem with the fact that we spend money, but we don't know how it's being spent. We have programs that that are not necessarily evidence-based because we spend money, but they don't work. But we continue to spend that. That's an accountability issue. We have our schools right now that are underutilized. Underutilized schools cost us money. We still have to heat them, no matter how many students are there. I'm running because our students need to excel, and we have not done that. And I believe that with my degree, I graduated from Winston-Salem State University in political science and public administration. I understand the politics that surrounds our schools. I understand that we need to have commitment and we need to have advocacy for all of our children. And that's what I bring to the school board, commitment and advocacy, because that is very important. Thank you. Shanita Barnes.
Good evening. My name is Melisha Woodbury, and obviously I'm running for School Board District 1. I'm a native of Winston-Salem, graduated from Carver High School in 1992. I went to UNC Chapel Hill, and then I furthered my education at North Carolina A&T, where I received 2 masters, one in school history education and another in public school administration. Currently, I'm finishing my doctorate work in school leadership, where I'm proposing to look at the lack of effective partnerships between local education agencies and community organizations, specifically that exist in minority communities. Currently, I work in Guilford County Schools. I work as a curriculum coach, but for the past 5 years, I've worked on probably one of the nation's most innovative projects called, it was the PACE project. So Guilford County Schools led a one-to-one technology initiative where all of our middle school kids had devices, and we helped our students and teachers to come to understand personalized learning, which now the state has adopted, and it's become one of the major goals of our state. And I also work at North Carolina A&T State University in the history department, which I've done for the past 17 years. So totally I've been in public school education and teaching at the collegiate level for about 20 years. I also have extensive community service. I've worked with the Winston-Salem Foundation on the scholarship committee for several years. I have, of course, been the president of the Carver High School Alumni Association, which is very dear to my heart, and I helped to co-found the Coalition for Equity in Education right here in Winston-Salem, where we have been able to present information to the school board. But I'm running for school board because Barack Obama signed in that every student succeed act, but not all students are succeeding in Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools. We have 40 schools failing, one, Ashley and Cook, lowest performing elementary schools, Philo Hill, lowest performing middle schools, high suspension rates of African American male students. So combined with those things, I think District 1 definitely needs somebody like myself who has the background as a state certified turnaround specialist. So I'm certified to go into any school in North Carolina to help turn it around, and most of my background has been, of course, in helping students in the situation that we see in the state of Forsyth County Schools. So I ask that you vote for me because of my experience in education and my commitment to this community.
So we also gave the candidates 3 pre-prepared questions and asked them to prepare remarks. We'll rotate through so that not the same person starts each time, and Barbara will lead us off this time. The first question, and each candidate will have 1 minute to kind of just respond, give their feedback, is what is one educational issue that we need to prioritize, and how do you suggest we address it? Please be specific.
The most pressing educational issue or need that we have in this school system is equity. As Melisha said, President Barack Obama signed into law ESSA, where that means every student succeeds. And we don't have every student succeeding in Forsyth County. If you look at the recent data, as I just said, and if you analyze it and you understand, we have 8 of the lowest elementary schools in the state of North Carolina. Ashley, Cook, Forest Park, Kimberly Park are at the lowest in the state of North Carolina. We have 8 schools, well, we have 7 now, in danger of being taken over and turned into charter schools. One was recently taken over. Middle Fork Elementary has been taken over by Appalachian State, and we have 7 more on the list. And if they don't make progress, they are going to be taken over. So equity is a problem, and it means that every student will succeed, and all of our students are not succeeding, not on the elementary level, not on the middle school level, and not on the high school level.
Can we pass the microphone on down? We're going to keep on through the question.
The most pressing issue in education right now is that our society has socialized us to not ask critical questions about race and economic inequities. And until we start asking those critical questions, start looking at ourselves, then we're going to continue to have major gaps in our achievement, and we'll continue to always be behind. We have to look at our own personal biases, look at the system itself. Institutional racism is planted deep in the educational system. So we have to be honest about it. And until that time, like I said, there will be the gap. No matter what we do, how much money we spend, as long as we are not honest about that, start training people, coaching people on how not to be, or we can't train them not to be because that's just natural, but how to recognize it and make those corrections, then we're going to continue to be falling behind.
I think our pressing problem in our school system is communication and participation, and specifically with our community. For some reason, our school board has not insisted that, well, they say that they invite parents into the schools, but parents do not feel welcome. They do not feel that they really have a say in the education or the outcome of their kids. I think that the schools, what we need to do is learn how to get outside of the walls. We need to understand that the community has to work together because, you know, we're taxpayers, so we should have a say anyway. But what we should do is make sure that we have our church, and let me give an example. What our church does is we have a program called the Grandparents Program. And what we do is we have gone to the schools and have said, you know, these people will intercede for these children because they have permission from their parents. That's that participation from the community that needs to be a part of every single school because the churches are in our communities.
According to the North Carolina Public School Forum, which is one of our major educational think tanks, the number 3rd educational issue in our state is about school choice. And right here in Winston-Salem, Forsyth County, we definitely have an issue with school choice. So I think that as it relates to what I would do specifically about the school choice program, since apparently it seems to segregate our schools and create inequities, I think first we need to look at one of the specific policies that deals with the assignment of pupils, which is policy 5117. I think we need to prioritize strategies and methods to integrate schools with diversity among staff and students. And one of the things that I have talked about during this campaign is finding a community task force to help us to figure out how to bring our school district together in a very human way and hopefully influence policy so that we can either eradicate or lessen the impact of what our children are having to deal with because of the school choice program. Thank you.
So the biggest issue for me is how our system values difference, which is divided into 3 categories Diversity, equity, and inclusion. Diversity speaking to the actual presence of people who come from different backgrounds. That's extremely important, particularly for students, because you can't be what you can't see. The second piece, equity, is ensuring that those students have what they need. Every student is not going to be the same. Every student is not going to learn the same way. So we have to ensure that they have the tools that they need to learn exceptionally. The last piece is inclusion. When you have the presence of people, and when you have everything that they need, the tools that they need, you have to make sure that they have a voice, and that that voice is being valued. Thank you.
We'll pass the microphone down to Eunice. We'll start there next. We have two more design questions, and I think you'll see some overlap here, so I hope the speakers, if they felt like they got cut off after a minute, will return to some of the previous thoughts, because there is a fair amount of overlap. This is a long question, so bear with me. The Winston-Salem-Forsyth County website reads, on December 10th, President Obama signed the Every Student Succeeds Act, legislation to rewrite the Elementary and Secondary Act and replace No Child Left Behind. ESSA, or ESSA, provides support to schools with groups of traditionally underserved students who consistently demonstrate low performance. ESSA also provides support to high schools with low graduation rates. How is our district implementing ESSA, and what changes would you like to see?
Very good question. I'll be honest, I don't know how our district is implementing ESSA because they have yet to publicize it in any way. I've been to meetings with Ms. Woodbury. I've been to meetings with, concerning ESSA. I've been to meetings with the Teachers Association concerning ESSA, but I haven't heard anything from the district. The one question at the State of the District about ESSA, I asked the superintendent about the way that they will, the high school graduation rate may have to change because of some of the ESSA laws, and she assured me that it would not. I know more about ESSA from YouTube and webinars on YouTube than I know from the district. So that is a very good question that the district does need to start answering because their time is running out as far as guidelines.
Yeah, please do.
Okay. Well, Am I on? Yep, you hear me? Oh, okay. Okay. Ms. Campbell is correct. Our schools, our school board really has not told us how they plan on implementing ESSA specifically. It's there. The Community Coalition for Equity in Education has presented a plan to them concerning ESSA and the implementation of it, but it was not placed on the last schedule of the last board meeting. So at this point, we don't know. What I would like to see is if we're looking at low-performing high schools and low-performing schools, ESSA is supposed to give the community, that's everybody, as stakeholders, participation in how their schools are supposed to look. So if we don't like the fact that we have low-performing schools, specifically in District 1, and we have, I think, more than 30 low-performing schools, 23 right here. So if we don't like that, then what we need to do is to go to our school board members and tell them this is what we want and this is how we want our schools to look. But as of now, I don't see how they're going to implement it. But I think that we should make sure that they tell us in due time.
I would agree that the district has not been very proactive in informing us about ESSA and its implementation holistically, meaning community groups, parents just have not really extended a very proactive hand. But if you go on the website, they do have information about ESSA. So the website gives you basic law information, and it talks about Title I, which is how financially they're going to implement ESSA. What I would suggest is that, as I've talked about earlier, I work with the Coalition for Equity in Education, and we submitted before the school board resolutions to add components into the implementation of ESSA from a community standpoint. And I'll just read you the first sentence. Resolved that the ESSA Citizens Advisory Committee recommends that the Winston-Salem-Forsyth County School System collect data on student engagement and school climate, where student engagement is defined as more time students spend in school involved in constructive learning activities. Engaged, the more likely students are able to learn and succeed, and where school climate and safety is defined as the quality and character of school life based on patterns of students. I would more than welcome you to look at this information that has been produced and provided to the school district to connect better with the school district with ESSA implementation.
I've been going to school board meetings for about 6 months, and I have not heard ESSA mentioned once in those meetings, which is very problematic for me. But I think that generally there isn't enough transparency regarding not just this issue, but lots of other issues on our board. But my strategy, and what I think needs to happen as we get close to the implementation of ESSA, is that we are informing the community, consulting them, and ensuring that they're involved in the decisions, engaging with them on how we make this happen, and then empowering them so that they can pick up the work and ensure that they are doing what it is that their communities need, and that they have some responsibility in that effort. Thank you.
Because I am an administrator and because I have been in that role for the last 6 years, I have the opportunity to meet every month with district level people, the superintendents, the instructional supervisors, and I can tell you we never have discussed ESSA. So that is something that we need to make sure we start to discuss, make sure that everyone is aware, because it is a law. It is a law that we're supposed to follow. So the question is, how is it being implemented in our school system? Well, we are telling you, we have so many schools that are failing. We're all running for school board in District 1. And if we take a look at the number of schools failing in District 1, it's just about every school. We're talking about students who are in elementary school who are not proficient. Their scores, their levels of proficiency for many of them are not even 5%, not even 10%. That is alarming. And the older students get, the higher they go up in grade level, the lower those scores, those numbers become, those levels of proficiency. At the high school where I work, more than 90% of the 9th graders who begin at Carver High School, more than 90% start out reading below, reading on 3rd and 4th grade level. That is unacceptable. So how is our school system implementing ESSA? Not very well. And it is something that we're going to have to make sure we start to enforce. Thank you.
We've got a few audience questions. I've got one more planned, but I think you all would much rather hear from them. And so this question, we're going to move to, and Shanita will lead us off. The first question is, how do we get more male and minority educators involved in our school system?
That's very simple. Okay. I'm sorry. It's very simple. We need to pay them. We just need to pay them. And it's very difficult. When my kids were in school, my daughter's teachers, if her male teachers were math teachers or science teachers, if they lasted until before Christmas, we were lucky. And I'm talking about at Whitaker Elementary and at Jefferson Middle School. Because they just were not paid what they needed to be paid in order for them to stay. So we would lose teachers just like that. So we need to understand that teachers are professionals, that they should be paid what they've gone to school, they've done with the work that they're supposed to do. If they were doctors, you would pay them consummate to what the years of what they did. So the best way to do that is to pay them, and also to make sure that we have a diverse package within our school system, because that will also bring more teachers into our schools.
I definitely think that the county needs to create a better supplement for our teachers here in Winston-Salem, Forsyth County. You can go right over to Guilford County Schools and make $1,000 more with the supplement. So the money piece is a factor, but I also think that Winston-Salem, Forsyth County Schools can use the program that Winston-Salem State has called Real Men Teach. And they have a very strong education program that attracts males, especially minority males, into teaching. So I would suggest that Winston-Salem, Forsyth County Schools utilize programs that Winston-Salem State already has to attract minority students, especially males, into teaching.
So I will agree that conversation with the county commissioners has to happen in order to increase the subsidy that they already provide to the teacher pay in Forsyth County. We are below our other larger counties within the state, and so we have to change that. But the second piece, I think, is to change the narrative that exists, that has existed for a really long time, that teaching and education is not a man's job. But we see that it is, and that it has to be. Because for students, if we expect them, particularly our young men, if we expect them to take learning seriously, and if we expect them to develop a lifelong commitment to learning, then we have to ensure that we are placing people who look like them in the system. Because if that is the case, if I can see somebody that looks like me, then I'm more likely to be engaged. I'm more likely to take this seriously. I'm more likely to do my work. And so we have to do what we can to change that narrative. Because that's a narrative that is changing slightly, but we have to do more work to get that done. But also, you can't hire people and then when you have them in the system, not have policies in place to ensure that they are included and that they feel valued when they're in the system. So we have to do that as well. Thank you.
I think, like everyone else has said, we have to pay our teachers. We have to pay them for their worth and their education. But another way that we could attract male teachers is to identify them while they're in high school, maybe even in middle school, to identify those young men who possess a special talent in the area of science, maybe math, maybe English, those core courses. We need to identify them early, and we need to start to groom them, have those conversations with them to find out if they would be interested in teaching. And if they are, then we need to partner up with these universities that are right here in our communities, and we need to partner up with their education programs and go ahead and start to have opportunities for these young men to go to these universities, or the university personnel to come to the schools, to go ahead and get them prepared and in the mindset of becoming teachers, to enroll them in summer enrichment programs just to start that partnership, and offer scholarships so that they can attend those schools. Thank you.
If we want black males to come back to our schools, teach, volunteer, then we need to treat them better while they're in the schools. Black males are 58% of the disciplined children in our district. Well, black children, but only make up 28% of our population in the district. We need to find out ways to treat our black male better in the school, create that relationship, that loyalty, that bond, make them want to come back. One of my plans, if chosen for school board, is restorative justice. Instead of throwing children out of school for a few days or in school suspension for a few days and nothing is accomplished, we work on restoring the relationship. Once you restore relationships, build bonds, communicate, then that's how you get them to want to come back. If not teaching, volunteering.
Well, Eunice, you led us very nicely into the next set of questions. There are 3 questions that I think are somewhat related and hope that we can find some way to intersect and answer here. And I want to read all 3 of them and then ask, and we're going to lead off at the end here this time. The first question is, what would you do to address the issues surrounding discipline concerns in the district? Suspensions, interventions, and parent involvement. And then, as a secondary question, the question of safety in schools, because I think they go somewhat hand in hand. In this day and age of Parkland, Sandy Hook, and Columbine, how do you plan to keep the students safe on campus? And I had a statistic, but it was just read out loud, so we'll go ahead and move along.
In Gifford County Schools, I work with the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, where I actually train teachers with diversity and inclusion so that they can go into our classrooms and make sure that they are engaging students with best practices, cultural relevancy. So I think that as it relates to the discipline piece, when teachers are sensitive to whom they are teaching, then discipline goes down. But the other piece that I work with in Gifford County Schools, I help to create the initiative Raise Us Up, which is an African American male initiative, where we have seen suspensions go down and we have seen literacy go up because of just best practices and utilizing the research that has helped us to put the project together. As it relates to, will I get 1 minute per question, or they're all?
We'll go 1.5 minutes on this.
Okay, and so for the issue of school safety, I applaud especially the young people in here and the young people across our nation that have taken the leadership to help us as adults realize that safety is key in our schools and throughout our country. I definitely think that as it relates to the safety issues of our school, we need to partner with the local safety agencies, police department. The national organization for SRO say that the one way that we can't fix it is through giving guns to teachers. Elon University just did a survey and 70% of North Carolina teachers said they don't want a gun in the classroom, so that's not going to work. The SROs say that we just need to proportionately have SRO officers, for example, in our schools. So that would be something that I would definitely consider as a school board member. Thank you.
So addressing the discipline piece, Guilford County actually has an Office of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion. Ms. Woodbury was just mentioning that. Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools does not have that office. And a part of the function of that office is to look at those reports, that quantitative data, to see where these suspensions are happening, why they're happening. Do teachers need some training in cultural competency? What is the common denominator here, and address that in-house. And we don't have that infrastructure here, so that's a problem, and that's the first thing. To address school safety, we have to ensure that we are looking at school safety plans, and they're different at every school because every school just geographically is designed differently. But we have to be doing that system-wide. But we also can't alienate those with mental health issues who are more likely to experience physical violence anyway. We have to ensure that every student has what they need, that we are increasing the amount of school psychologists in classrooms, that we are giving students the ability to go and seek counseling, that we also are equipping students with coping skills and equipping them to develop skills of resilience so that they can understand that life is hard, but you have to keep pushing through it. Thank you.
To deal with discipline, I do believe that we need to go to interventions versus suspensions. I think that we need to try to do a better job of identifying why certain behaviors occur with certain students. I think we need to delve a little deeper into connecting the parents, connecting our counselors, our social workers, our school psychologists. We need to do more reflective practices and restorative practices so that we can get to the root of the problem. And also, when it comes to data, I can tell you firsthand because I'm there. We know what the suspension numbers are, but those numbers do not tell us what interventions were done before we get to that point. So I'm going to move on to safety. We need to secure our schools, just like we secure courthouses, just like we secure all government facilities. We don't have to worry about anyone going inside a courthouse or any of these federal buildings shooting up anyone. We need metal detectors. We need to research the most sophisticated technology that might be available so that we can secure all campuses. And we need to take in mind that all schools are not created equal. We have some schools that have separate buildings throughout the campuses, so the needs are going to be a little different. So we need to do the research, and we need to provide each school with what they need to keep everybody inside safe. Thank you.
I just, like you said, finished up with restorative justice. So as far as that answers that part of the question, but I want to make sure that it's clear that restorative justice would include the student, the teacher, the parent, and the community if necessary. As far as safety, one of my initiatives is the implementation of emotional intelligence in the schools. Emotional intelligence is the ability to understand your emotions, understand the emotions of others, and be able to act properly with those understandings. Emotional intelligence training for the teacher, the parent, and the student. Suicide is the #1 cause of death for teens in our county. Bullying is a major issue. That type of safety alone, drug abuse, if you have training, teach children how to take care of their emotions. We give children technology, but we don't train them how to think logically. And we wonder why they take pictures of themselves, inappropriate pictures of themselves, and just send them out across the internet. Because they're not thinking about consequences. They haven't had the character building. So if we start working on a child's character, their strength, their resilience, then they will make better choices. They'll say better things. It will help with the kids being thrown out of school, the detention rate as well, simply by using their being smarter with feelings. That's what I call it. Simply being smarter with feelings.
Concerning the suspensions, I believe that we need to have more cultural and diversity training in our schools. I don't think that we have enough of it. Sometimes I think that we're looking at children through our own eyes and not necessarily from their culture or where they come from. And we have seen that children who are suspended, primarily African American males, and the files that are built on them start very simply. It could be anything. They could whistle down the hallway and get written up, and they could chew gum and get written up, and then they have a file, and then they're in detention, and then that continues on, and then you have a suspension. So I think that teachers just have to be more culturally aware of the diverse students that they will be teaching. Concerning the safety issue, as you know, I'm a person who believes in full communication. I believe in inclusiveness, And because of that, I think that we're forgetting certain people in our school system. We're forgetting the support staff in our schools that also need to be trained as well. We're talking about a lot about our teachers and administrators, but our cafeteria workers, our custodians, our bus drivers also need to have this same training, because they're our eyes and ears as well in the community, and they see how these children react. They see the difference between them when they get on the bus, between the time that they're eating, and they are the ones that can tell this child is having a problem, and then we can go ahead and move forward to bringing in counselors, because they will be able to understand that this is where we need to start with these children.
All right, we are getting close on time, so I've tried to combine a few more questions once more. Perhaps it'll work, perhaps it won't. We do need to go down to a minute so that we can make sure we have appropriate time. And I don't think that the candidates are going to honestly be able to answer all 4 of these questions right here, right now. But I do think it's important that they are aware of what you all find is important. This is part 1 is sort of before being that you're running for school board. Have you attended school board meetings, and how many over the past 2 years? So if you go to answer the question, if you can just sort of briefly speak to that. Part 2 is a question about finances. Finances is a big part of school board business, from contract negotiations to budgets. How do you plan to manage these issues? And then part 3 is similar. What types of hands-on experience, I know many of you all have spoken to this already, do you have in the school system? And then someone along the lines of finance also asked the question, how does working with the public transportation, the WSTA, to get students to school sound? We're going to come back up to the front this time, and Alex will lead us off. But those 4 questions generally speak to themes the audience were interested in, and then we're going to set it up here before with the remaining themes that we had. So whenever you're ready.
As I mentioned earlier, I've been attending school board meetings for about 6 months. And to address the finance piece, I currently serve as a trustee at my church, First Baptist on Highland Avenue. I have for about 2 years. And a part of that job is looking at finances, a breakdown, looking at line items, going through budgets. And so I am well versed in looking at budgets and can do that. And ensuring that everyone is spending the money in their different departments in the way that they're supposed to, looking at things from an exegetical lens and really kind of getting down into what is there is important. And so that's what I'll do as a school board member. Thank you.
I've been attending school board meetings for almost 30 years. I've even presented at school board meetings some of the successes and best practices that I've had as a teacher and as an administrator. The last year, probably 10. As far as school finances, right now, this time of the year, this is something that I've been doing for years as an administrator. This time of the year, we're looking at enrollment. And if you are a parent, you're looking at your students' course selections for next year. We use those course selections to determine teacher allotment. So right now, and I have 2 of my colleagues right here, last Friday we were looking at allotments, we were looking at teacher numbers and making decisions about how many teachers we need to teach English, how many we need to teach math, how much money will it cost to take care of hiring teachers, the number of teachers we need for each area, and do we need to go in this pot of money, this Title I pot of money, for example, to pay for half of a teacher. So I'm used to looking at different monies and how to allocate them. That is something that I've been doing for a long time. Thank you. Sorry I didn't get to the other questions.
As far as school board meetings, I've been going to the school board meetings for a year and a half now. And when I don't actually make the school board meetings, I actually watch them on TV. I've presently been going, actually I've gone back a couple of years and binge watched one weekend so I can be caught up, because that's the type of person I am. When I decided 2 years ago that I wanted to run for school board this year, I started really homing in and doing my homework. So I knew I had to go back and get some history beyond what I'd seen from just being out advocating. I've been advocating for the school system for over 10 years. As far as experience with finances, I'm an analyst on a consulting team for BCD Travel, which is the third largest travel agency in the world. I take numbers and I turn them into selling stories. What we do is I have a portfolio of customers like Groupon that we show them how to manage their travel spend. And also, as far as the buses, I'm not sure exactly what that part was, but real quickly, I have spoken with a company that is trying to pitch to Forsyth County Schools about a new arm to go on the school bus. It extends out a little further. They've tested it throughout a couple of counties throughout the district, and it's working great. So that's one of the things that I would like to get that person time in front of the board so we can look at that extension of that school, the stop sign on.
Yes, I have attended school board meetings, and I've seen them in person, I've seen them on television, and I think everyone who is in Winston-Salem, Forsyth County should attend the board meeting at least a couple of times during the course of the year. I think as residents of this county, I think it's incumbent upon us to do that. Even if you're just running for office, but so that you will know what's going on with your school system. Secondly, what was the second one? I'm sorry. The finances. I am on various committees in the community concerning the impact on poverty and housing. One committee that I work with, I've been on the board with, is Experiment in Self-Reliance, and we deal with budgets, line item budgets. So I'm very used to that. I have no issues with finances. Concerning the bus, I don't know if you're thinking about maybe using public transportation, if that's the vein of that question. And if so, yes, I think that should be something we should look at.
I've definitely been attending school board members since 2015 with the Coalition for Equity in Education. And not only have I attended the school board meetings, but we have invited school board members to our meetings in order to build partnerships to help get some things done in our community. So that has been definitely a good experience. As it relates to the finances, of course, I directed a $6 million Department of Education federal grant through Guilford County Schools, and it was a very successful grant that they allowed us to extend it for additional 2 years. Ironically, when I was in the public school administration program, Don Martin came to my class to teach us about the financial budget of Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools, which I thought was very perplexing. But I think that's one of the things that Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools need to work on as it relates to transparency. As it relates to the WSTA component, in my travels with education, especially going up north into Philadelphia and Baltimore, public transportation is a seamless integration into how I think children are transported. So I'm not sure where the question was going, but I have seen it work very seamlessly upstate.
We're going to start with Barbara this time. A couple of different audience members have asked questions regarding community engagement. The one that I want to read out loud is ESA requires community engagement in its implementation. What are you proposing as a strategy to engage our community in educating our children?
As a school board member, the first thing I would do is reach out to all stakeholders, and I would start with parents. I would find out from them what they expect from me as a school board member and how I can best serve them. After speaking with the parents in the community and galvanizing them and their thoughts and their desires, their wish list, then I would go and speak with the teachers. And I would not speak with all of the teachers at once. I would separate them based on levels. Elementary teachers will have a different conversation than middle school teachers and high school teachers. Then I would talk with the administrators. some way, somehow, we would come back together and we would start to have town hall meetings, chew and chat conversations, so that we're all on the same page, because I believe at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. I think we all want to make sure our students are successful and that learning takes place in our buildings and that we have the resources to do what we need to do to ensure that learning does happen. Thank you.
I would do what I would actually continue to do what I'm currently doing, and that's being a part of the community, being a part of community organizations like Parent Power, which is an organization that has different events throughout the year. It's run through the district, and it's free. They have it at Sideworth Children's Museum, and during that time they'll have a speaker or some type of entertainment, child care, they'll feed you. I'll continue on with that endeavor because it's a part of being on the board of directors for the Title I Parent Advocacy group. So those are the type you have to go to the community. You have to be a part of the organization. You just can't visit and make an appearance. You have to be a part. Choose one, choose two, but choose some organization to be a part of and constantly seen.
I don't think we need to invent the wheel. We have a PTA. And the PTA is organized in order to help the parents, the teachers, and the students. That brings in those stakeholders. Then after organizing information in the PTA, I think we need to go out of those four walls and deal with the churches, because we have a church on almost every corner. And every church has some program that we can incorporate into this community initiative. After that, we need to go into the community some more and start working with various organizations. The Experimental Simple Alliance is a very good organization that will work, because what they're doing now with them going into the various neighborhoods, they are asking the parents to come and to tell them what it is that they need in their communities. So this is information that can be taken back. So I think working with the PTA, working with our churches, and working with these type of community organizations, we can go ahead and we can work with, I'm sorry, that we can bring all this together.
As I explained earlier, my doctoral work is in the interest of how to bridge that gap between community and local education agencies. So I'm hoping that this scholarship helps us to really figure out why there are disconnections, why we can't bring those pieces together. But I would like to extend something with the PTA piece. So the PTA has policy. Actually, they're embedded in Winston-Salem Forsyth County policy as an entity that helps us to bridge the gap between, of course, school and the community. Unfortunately, PTA works in some schools, but not in all schools, and primarily it's an issue with District 1. So I would love to see the PTA as a whole entity understand that, and I think there is understanding, but just figure out how do we make all PTAs successful, because just because yours is successful and others aren't, the PTA really isn't as effective as it could be. So I would definitely like to invest some time working with PTA to help make all of our PTAs work effectively.
So I'd like to go back to my earlier point, which is first to inform the community. You have to let them know what's going on, and then you have to have the opportunity to consult them, to allow them to ask you questions, to ask them what it is that they want, to engage with them, to talk about what are the needs of our various communities around our city. And then the last piece is to empower them, to give them the resources. Ms. Barbara Johnson talked about churches, empowering different groups and organizations and churches to be able to facilitate what is needed in those communities so that they can stay engaged with those communities, because children need to see that their communities care about them and that they are engaged in their success and they are invested in their success. Thank you.
Eunice, we'll start with you this time. There are several questions that revolve around the achievement gap, but I want to center in on the question of school choice. How would you modify the school choice plan, if you would? And what form of school assignment would you suggest as a means of diversifying our schools? And even if you weren't to do such a broad initiative, is there something more narrow you would be interested in doing?
Our current school choice policy has segregated our schools. It's just happened. It wasn't a good plan, and it does need to be revised. Now, there are some districts out in the country who have implemented school choice, and it is working. So the issue with ours is that we have parents that just left these schools. We need to rethink our school zones. What your neighborhood school is, what it isn't. Okay, and we have to be honest about that, and it's going to be some tough choices because some people will get angry because they're thinking that we're taking something away from them, and that's just human nature. If you think something's being taken away from you, you'll get upset. But we have to relook at our district. We need to look at our zone the way we have our schools mapped out, and that's the first way to change our school choice, because we need to actually give parents a choice.
One of the fallacies of school choice was that there was never a choice in the beginning, and there was always a choice. Parents could always send their kids where they wanted to. I just needed to say that because I was in that, and I understand that is how that worked. Now what we've done is created a plan that has not only resegregated our schools, but has created little economic issues within the system. And then what we're trying to do is fix it by creating programs and policies to try to help these children who have been systematically placed in these little enclaves. It's hard to do that from that perspective. I think school choice needs to just be reversed. We need to get rid of it. It does not help us at all. It has not created a better school system for us. It's really punished us economically because we have underutilized schools in our system. And as I said before, whether those schools are half populated or not, we still have to heat them. And we still have to do the lights for these kids. So it costs us money to have this plan, so we need to rethink it.
I think the real issue about school choice, unfortunately, is about the segregation of our schools and what we are teaching our children in the 21st century about multiculturalism and inclusion. I agree with Ms. Campbell that we live where we live in Winston-Salem Forsyth County schools, but the bigger problem is that parents want to choose to take their students to better schools. That better piece is what has created, I think, the major problem here. Winston-Salem Forsyth County schools need to make sure that all schools are good schools, so that there isn't this issue about choosing to go, to other schools because they are better. So one of the things that I definitely want to make sure that the superintendent is very cognizant of is that we need to make sure that we close this achievement gap, that we make all schools effective schools where students can learn.
So, in addition to working on the school choice plan and changing it, I think that one of the biggest issues is that there is a narrative that is perpetuated regarding some of the schools in District 1 that labels them as bad schools. Ms. Woodbury was just touching on that. When you change that narrative, and when you understand that really the same problems that occur at some of these schools occur at all of the other schools, they just are not in the media as much. Some of these proficiencies on the tests, they have to change, they're being worked on, but we have to change the narrative. One of my kids at the Boys and Girls Club was like, "You went to Parkland? Parkland is a ratchet school." And I said, Parkland is not a wretched school. Parkland is a fantastic school. And so what we have to do is little by little, and we all have responsibility in that, is to change the narrative regarding our schools.
I think that we do need to change school choice. I really don't believe we have school choice. I don't believe that every parent can choose the school that their student attends. I think that if we take a realistic look at our school system, we have become racially and socioeconomically segregated. And that has caused the achievement gap that we're dealing with. We have a diverse group of learners in the school system. But if you go from school to school, you will not see that diversity. And I think that that is what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to make a conscious effort to restructure our school system so that every school, so that every classroom, to the best of our abilities, will represent the diverse learners that we really are serving. Our students need to all work together, go to school together, because that will help them to be prepared to live and function in a global society. So we need to diversify the school system and make sure that all of our classrooms have heterogeneous learners. Thank you.
All right. Our next question is Malishe is going to start us off. There's one word here that is triple underlined, so I'm going to try to be really clear about that. If you could do only one thing to narrow the achievement gap, what would it be? And let's try to take this beyond the question of school choice, since we just had a round about that, but what's the one policy, what's the one solution you think that could be pushed to narrow the achievement gap?
Policy 6123 looks at instructional objectives, and it specifically defines strategies to close the achievement gap in Winston-Salem and Forsyth County schools, but it's very ambiguous. And in working with Johns Hopkins University and Howard University to turn around schools in Guilford County schools, we had to be very specific and intentional with best practices and evidence-based research to close the achievement gap. So I think that if we review and amend policy 6123 to have specific strategies to close the achievement gap that's based on evidence-based, research-based practices, then we can start moving in the right direction.
The one thing that I would do in order to close the achievement gap is to ensure that culturally relevant materials are integrated in every single piece of the curriculum that students experience, not just in the history. So we're not just learning about African American history, but we're learning about all of the different contributions that people of color and traditionally marginalized people have made to all facets of academia. The reason why that's important is because you can't be what you can't see. And that if I see someone that looks like me in the material that I'm studying, I am more likely to be engaged. I am more likely to be proficient on these tests because I'm able to see myself and connect with that material and see its importance.
I know we've already talked about school choice, but that is why we have such a huge achievement gap. But I will move on. The next thing that we need to do more individualized learning. We need to find out exactly where each student is when they arrive to school. Kindergarten,